All right, so we begin today where we picked up, where we left off last Wednesday, and moving now to thinking about ministry, some theological reflections on ministry, and then moving to beginning to help you formulate and think about your personal conceptions of ministry and what that reflects and what that might tell you. And so where we ended up last Wednesday was in the context of talking about worldview. Ministry is a smaller component of a worldview. And how you fit in your worldview, or how ministry fits in your worldview, is an important part of how you go about doing ministry, what it is that you're trying to do in your service to God. A lot of that is reflected and reflective of where you stand on a number of issues. And so this definition is the one that we used. Others could be offered, but this one seems to highlight some things that I think are important when it comes to worldview. And so we highlighted that out of this definition are some key components in thinking about how a worldview is constructed, what consists of a worldview, or what a worldview consists of, and what elements are important to recognize. So we talked about basic beliefs. These are the fundamental ways we think about what society is, what it means to be a person, the origins and meaning of the universe, life itself, and of course, those things shape ministry. We also talked about the importance of recognizing this shared communal narrative, right? The grand story. All worldviews have one. It's a story that's laid out, often in very intricate detail, but sometimes very simplistically, some of those basic beliefs. Right? So the shared grand story tells us much of those basic beliefs. Worldviews entail a faith commitment. It's based on things that cannot be determined in any sort of empirical, scientific way, but are larger. These grand truths, these noble virtues. And so those are areas in which you're asked to accept certain things on faith, to trust that the grand story that tells you about your world is true. And it shapes what it means to be you, what it means to be you with other people, and so it entails an overview of our whole and individual, our corporate and individual lives. Excuse me. So why is a worldview important, or why is it important to think about a worldview? In many respects, our worldview is something that is often taken for granted. It's not something we reflect on. Probably most of us have adopted a worldview without necessarily critically thinking about it. It's because this is how we grew up, or this is what we focused on or read about, or any of a number of things related to those kind of things. So why is it important? Well, in many respects, a lot of what we encounter in life is shaped by a worldview of some sort. Whether that's our religious life, the life of the religious communities we're a part of, whether that's the media we consume, even in many respects the type of food we eat, the places we shop, marketing, consumerism, all of that is shaped by a worldview as well. And we're starting to see, if we pay attention closely, how different even companies are promoting certain worldviews of what it means or what it should mean to live in society. And so much of what we encounter is shaped by a variety of worldviews. Some, as Christians, we should feel very comfortable accepting. Others, if we really thought about it, we would be very cautious about accepting the worldview that's being promoted. And so not only is the things that we encounter in our culture, in our society, shaped by worldview, but there's also a way in which our worldview affects our day-to-day life. And so as we think about how we look at other people, how we think about the cars we drive, the food we eat, that's affected by worldview. And so when we go out and live in the world, we are shaped by some things that are those basic beliefs, that is shaped by that grand story. These perceptions affect our understanding of reality. Now, certainly, when we think about reality around us is greater than what we are aware of. Because there's only so much we can process at any one time. And when we think about it, there exists a multitude of experiences outside of this room right now that we would call reality. There's other people in this building. There are other people sitting in classrooms across campus. There are people outside in the city of Montgomery. There are people outside in the state of Alabama. Right? We keep going larger and larger and larger. So there's so much of what we would call reality that we cannot physically experience because we can only be in one place at one time. But even in the environment around us, there are things going on that are greater than what we can physically understand at any one time as well. Some of you are distracted by the bug that keeps flying around. And so you're distracted by that, but are you paying attention to what I'm saying? Both of them are happening at the same time. Both of those, the eyes are catching one thing, the ears are, the sound's going in. And so our senses are accumulating a wide variety of data, but we're not necessarily processing it. There's a hum to the lights. Right. But you didn't think about it until I brought it up. Right? Most of us don't think, that's really loud humming. Until you stop. Why? Because we are processing certain things as important, other things as not important. Right? Well, some of those perceptions are just our bodies adjusting to the things around us, right? If this is what's important, so I need to focus all my energy on this, and so I'm ignoring everything else. There are certain things that we, physically can't comprehend or interact with. But then some of the things we adjust and shape by our worldview. Now, how much of our worldview is affected by what we believe to be universal truths, and how much of it is shaped by our perceptions, the things that we've grown up with, the things that we've just learned to process out of our lives. For somebody that has a nervous tic, right, in the sense of I got my fingers have got to be doing something all the time, right? So I'm clicking my pen or I'm crunching ice. I don't perceive that anymore because I'm not noticing it. But that might be noticed by the people around me. It might be something that's really... And so my perception, my sense experience, my worldview sometimes affects my understanding of reality. That can be positive, that can be negative. I personally believe the Christian worldview is true. And so I'm going to look at people, I'm going to look at human nature, I'm going to look at reality in certain ways that are, because of that worldview. I believe it to be true, or I wouldn't keep being a Christian. So it can be positive, but it can be negative as well, because we can know of certain behaviors and attitudes that we become a part of our lives that we might be unaware of that affect our reality. Okay? Because we don't often deliberate on those kinds of worldviews. Right? And so think about it. You have the opportunity to buy a new car, or you decide I need to get a new car. What is it that shapes what kind of car you're going to get? Well, most of us probably don't stop and think. Well, as a Christian, what would it be appropriate for me to purchase? We don't stop and think, what would Jesus drive? We don't think, should I be aware of the effect that this car is making on the environment? Should I be aware of how much of, and so we certainly take cost into account, but do we take it into account in the context of, I want to be a giving person, and so I'm going to dedicate so much of my money to being giving, and so that's going to reduce the amount I have on consumables, on some other things like that. And so there are a lot of things that if we truly went through and said, right, is this compatible with what I claim to be my worldview? But it could also kind of reflect our real worldview. Right? Am I really shaped by the Christian worldview, or am I shaped by another worldview, like consumerism? Right? Have I fallen into the trap of who I am is based on the stuff that I have and my purchasing power? Right? And so, we don't always think about these kind of things, and we sometimes assume, oh, I have a Christian worldview because I'm a Christian, and I go to church, or I'm majoring in Bible. Right? But do I live consistently with what the Christian worldview should be? So, I think it's important for us as we're taking this time to think about the Christian worldview and what the Christian worldview is. Before we get there, though, I want to bring in Stone and Duke a little bit. Now, hopefully you had the time to read Stone and Duke last week, but if you didn't, some of the basic things we're going to be talking about here, I think you're still going to be able to contribute to the conversation. But this is kind of where we're coming from. It's from the introduction and the first chapter. So one of the things that they emphasize several times in both the preface, introduction, and that first chapter are all Christians are theologians, right? And so here's just 3 spots out of the first couple pages of the book where they say basically the same thing. All Christians are theologians. Their calling, and their calling means Christians' calling, make them witnesses of faith and hence theologians as well. To be Christian at all is to be a theologian. There are no exceptions. And that's italicized in the text, right? So I'm not emphasizing that. They emphasize it. So, are all Christians theologians? Are they right? I mean, whether you had the chance to read those chapters or not, is that an accurate statement? Would you agree with that? Would you disagree with that?
I would agree. I would say that some people don't accept that they're a theologian, and they don't know that they're a theologian.
Okay.
They don't take it seriously, I guess.
Okay.
But we are, once we make that commitment to God.
Okay. Other thoughts? I guess we could also kind of include there that kind of value question. Should we be theologians as Christians? Because I think you're right, Tucker. There's kind of like people don't take it seriously. So that means that there's that kind of value question of should we be theologians? When you think of what a theologian is, right? You hear that term, right? Whether it's here or somewhere else. What do you think of? What are the kind of words, images that come to your mind when you think of a theologian?
I think of someone who in a way tries to logically make sense of theology and find a logical end to what is specific theology. they look for a logical reason for the viability of whether or not a particular theology is accurate. That's all.
Okay, so someone kind of engaged in a logical study of ideas and beliefs. What else do you think of when you hear? If somebody gets a chance to kill that thing, not that I'm promoting violence against bugs, but if you get the chance to get it, it is a big thing. Our poor fellow students online are probably, what is going on in that room? Mothra. All right, back to theology.
Oh,
That would have been awesome. All right, so distraction. All right, so other thoughts. What else do you think of when you think of a theologian, someone engaged in the process of theology?
somebody concentrating on morals and behavior.
Okay.
I think that's kind of what makes it different from a philosopher. Philosophy, I would say, just in the brain, but theologian is probably applying to your life.
Okay.
I can rephrase what I said earlier. When I think of theologian, I think of someone who looks at a theology and sees, like I said earlier, like if it holds up logically, or if there's holes that you can look at. That's kind of what I was trying to say.
Okay. So, testing the intellectual or logical validity. And Trent brought out the practical application, or especially the morals and values. So if this is kind of what we tend to think of when we think of theology, a theologian. Are all Christians theologians? Do all Christians do that?
I think other Christians believe like their pastors say the church thing, and they don't try to find reasons behind it. They can stick with they hear in church and keep solid. They believe it's bigger than church is right. They don't try to go and find facts to support it or something.
Yeah, and so instead of doing their own personal investigation, it's kind of, well, this authority, whether that's a church, whether it's a religious leader, this authority has indicated this is right, this is true, and so I'll just accept it. And I think probably a lot of people tend to do that. They believe that the minister, the teacher, the church, the priest, whatever type of religious authority has done the work, done the investigation, thought it through, so they must have the right ideas. Okay? So we kind of fall into that trap. Well, is that the kind of theology that they're talking about here? Right? Because that seems to be the case for most people in the pew, so to speak, is that they tend to just most of them would just kind of tend to accept the truth, the validity of what the minister, the Bible class teacher, or that they have said. The elders or whoever else you would have an authority. Is that then contradictory here to this, or are they suggesting that maybe we need to not accept it blindly, but be those kind of people that investigate?
Yeah, I think we should go I don't think it's always like this one that you hear. I don't think question it, but always I feel like you believe harder when you know for a fact it's true. And those could be able to tell you different. But if someone comes along and proves that you're wrong, it's like it changes your whole faith and it changes the whole thing.
Yeah, especially if it's something that's a deeply held belief, and so for so long I've believed this, but now I find out that this is true. That can change a lot of what you think and believe. So perhaps the ideal of what they're suggesting is something we should uphold, or maybe they're suggesting something different by theology. I think, though, that what they're intentionally trying to emphasize is that value component. They probably recognize, most people in the pew tend to just kind of passively absorb what they hear. But that's not what we should be. Instead, we should be people that are going to put the effort forth to investigate, to think through, to be deliberate about what we believe and why we believe it.